Welcome to another Ziva Math video. In this video, we are going to teach you how to simplify fractions. A fraction is in its simplest form when the numerator and denominator have no common factors except 1. When you first start learning how to simplify, you'll likely hear the term reduce. Simplify and reduce mean the same thing, and as you move to higher levels of math, you'll use the term simplify. Using the greatest common factor is ideal when simplifying, and that's how most teachers will start lessons on simplifying. We'll do the same in our video, but we'll also include some examples with tips for using any common factor. Check out the chapters in the video for the different examples and tips. I always encourage my students to use the factors they felt created the easiest steps. It's more important to work accurately than to always choose the greatest common factor. Let's look at our examples. In the first set of examples, we'll show you the steps to find and use the greatest common factor to simplify. In this example, we're going to simplify 8/12 using the greatest common factor, which means that we need to list the factors of 8 and 12. So the factors of 8 are 1 and 8. 1 times 8 is 8, and 2 times 4 is 8. So the factors of 8 are 1, 2, 4, and 8. And we need to do the same thing for the 12. 1 times 12 is 12, 2 times 6 is 12, and 3 times 4 is 12. Now, to identify our greatest common factor, we need to find the greatest number that is in both lists. And the greatest number that is in both lists is the 4. If you know your math facts and can identify that 4 is the greatest common factor in your head, you don't need to take the time to list all of the factors in both the numerator and the denominator. Now that we've identified 4 as being the greatest common factor, we're going to simplify. And to simplify, we're going to divide the numerator and the denominator by the greatest common factor, the 4. So we'll have 8 divided by 4 and 12 divided by 4. 8 divided by 4 is 2. 12 divided by 4 is 3. 8/12 simplifies to 2/3. In this example, we'll be simplifying 24/36 using the greatest common factor. So the first step that we need to do is list all of our factors of 24 and 36. So starting with 24, 1 times 24 is 24, 2 times 12 is 24, 3 times 8 is 24, and 4 times 6 is 24. And we'll need to do the same thing for 36. 1 times 36 is 36, 2 times 18 is 36, 3 times 12 is 36, 4 times 9 is 36, and 6 times 6 is 36. So the greatest number that's in both lists is 12. So 12 is our greatest common factor. If you know your math facts and can identify that 12 is the greatest common factor in your head, you don't need to take the time to list all of the factors of both numbers. If you recognized as you were writing the list out for 36, when we got to 12, that was the highest number that we'd seen repeated in both lists, and can identify the greatest common factor at that point, you don't need to continue your list of factors for 36. So now that we've established that 12 is the greatest common factor of 24 and 36, we're going to use 12 when we go to simplify. We'll be dividing the numerator by 12 and the denominator by 12. 24 divided by 12 is 2, and 36 divided by 12 is 3. 24/36 simplifies to 2/3. You aren't limited to using only the greatest common factor to simplify. You can use any common factor shared by the numerator and denominator. This is the approach that worked well for many of my own students. The next couple of examples will give you some tips for using any common factor when simplifying. In this example, we're going to simplify 24/32. Instead of listing the factors to find the greatest common factor, I'm going to use any common factor. If you see 24 and 32 and start to think, I know 4 is a common factor, then you can start simplifying using the 4. And that's what we're going to do here. we're going to divide 24 by 4 and 32 by 4, my numerator and denominator, by the same number. 24 divided by 4 is 6. 32 divided by 4 is 8. Anytime that you use a factor other than the greatest common factor, you need to be sure you've got your fraction in its simplest form. We need to ask ourselves, can we simplify 6/8? And if the answer is yes, then we have to keep going. Our fraction's not in its simplest form. And we can simplify 6/8. So we'll need to keep going. 6 and 8 share a common factor of 2. So I'll be dividing 6 by 2 and 8 by 2 to continue simplifying. 6 divided by 2 is 3, and 8 divided by 2 is 4. And again, be sure that your fraction is in its simplest form. Well, 3 and 4 don't share any common factors, so I've got my fraction in simplest form. 24/32 equals 3/4. In this example, we're going to simplify 18/42, and we'll be using any common factor. If the numerator and denominator are both even, and the only common factor you can think of is 2, start your simplifying with 2. Sometimes 2 is the only common factor the numerator and denominator share, and sometimes it's just a useful place to get started if you can't think of any other common factors. If you're stuck, you just need to get started somewhere. So we're going to use 2, which means we'll be dividing 18 by 2, and we'll be dividing our denominator of 42 by 2. 18 divided by 2 is 9, and 42 divided by 2 is 21. Anytime you use 2 to get your simplifying started, always be sure to check if your fraction is fully simplified. Here we have 9/21, and it's very tempting to say that the numerator and denominator are both odd, and therefore they can't be simplified. But having two odd numbers as the numerator and denominator has nothing to do with whether you can simplify a fraction. The only question is whether 9 and 21 share a common factor. They do. They share a common factor of 3, so we aren't done simplifying. We'll be dividing our numerator by 3 and our denominator by 3. 9 divided by 3 is 3, and 21 divided by 3 is 7. And from here, we need to be sure that our fraction is in its simplest form. 3 and 7 don't share any common factors, so we're done simplifying. 18/42 is equal to 3/7. In this example, we're going to simplify 30/45. Having an even numerator and an odd denominator has nothing to do with whether the fraction can be simplified. We want to know whether the numerator and denominator share any common factors. Both 30 and 45 are divisible by 5, so we're going to start there. And we'll divide our numerator by 5 and the denominator by 5. 30 divided by 5 is 6, and 45 divided by 5 is 9. We weren't sure if 5 was our greatest common factor, so we're going to have to check and see if 6/9 can be simplified. Again, we're not considering that one of the numbers is odd. We only care if 6 and 9 share a common factor that we can use to simplify. And they do. They share a common factor of 3, so we're going to need to keep going. We'll be dividing our numerator by 3 and our denominator by 3. 6 divided by 3 is 2, and 9 divided by 3 is 3. Now, remember, we want to be sure that our fraction is in its simplest form to make sure that we're done simplifying. 2 and 3 don't share any common factors, so 2/3 is fully simplified. So 30/45 is equal to 2/3. In this example, we're going to simplify 6/36. If you can divide the denominator by the numerator, use the numerator as your common factor. Anytime that you can divide your denominator by the numerator is your greatest common factor. So we can divide 36 by 6. So we're going to use 6 as our common factor, and in fact, it's our greatest common factor. We'll divide our numerator by 6 and our denominator by 6. 6 divided by 6 is 1, and 36 divided by 6 is 6. 6/36 is equal to 1/6. One of the biggest questions is, when can a fraction be simplified? Here are a few hints to help if you get stuck. A fraction can be simplified if the denominator can be divided by the numerator, or if the numerator and denominator share a common factor. A fraction cannot be simplified if the numerator is 1, the numerator is 1 less than the denominator, both the numerator and denominator are prime numbers, or the numerator and denominator do not share a common factor other than 1. Thank you for watching. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to Ziva Math for more videos.